Good morning, Mark Scheifmeyer, the city hearing examiner. I've been asked to convene a public hearing to consider a subdivision application submitted by AHBL in reference to a project referred to as the Reserves at Palisades, proposing the subdivision of 9.7 acres into 39 lots for detached single-family homes, bearing the city's number LD 2024.0072. In advance of today's hearing, I received the staff report authored by Mr. Kohler, who is present. I have reviewed that report in its entirety, as well as all the attachments that were submitted with the report, including all of the public comment. And I reviewed all public comment as well as all reports carefully in advance of today's hearing. I've also undertaken my own independent site examination. I did that today, spent about an hour examining the site and all surrounding neighborhoods and all surrounding road systems. And so I'm generally familiar with the site and surrounding properties. Purpose of today's hearing is threefold, as many of you know. It is first to hear from city staff, Mr. Kohler and others perhaps, to provide more information as to the staff's review of this application and its recommendations. Followed then by an opportunity of the applicant to add to or subtract from what the city has stated. Followed then by an opportunity for members of the public to be heard. And we do that, or I do that in a third position so that members of the public have as full an opportunity to hear about the application in its entirety before being asked to testify. And I do apologize if that means members of the public have to wait a bit for giving their testimony. This hearing is taking place in person. There is some aspects that are remote, but not participation. And so those who are participating are doing so in person today. All those who do testify, including staff, applicants, and members of the public, will do so under oath. And for those who are members of the public wishing to be heard, a couple of reminders. This is not the same as appearing before, say, the city council. The city council is a political body, and it's taking into consideration political aspects of its decision-making. And therefore, it is sensitive to popularity or lack of popularity of certain actions, and can, in large part, render its decisions based upon its reading of public sentiment. I do not have that authority or that right. My decisions are free of any sentiment and are strictly based upon findings. And so I'm not taking note of a project's popularity or lack of popularity. That's not a consideration I have. I'm not interested in the number of people who favor or disfavor a project. I'm not interested in petitions and that sort of thing, because again, those are a first cousin to that. What I am very much interested in are facts that sway this decision one direction or another. And so if you are a member of the public and wish to be heard, one of the best things you can do for your position is to provide me with factual reasons for your how you regard the project. So in other words, instead of saying, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I'm opposed to this project, and so are three of my neighbors, that hasn't moved the ball down the field very far. But if you were to say, Mr. Scheifmeyer or Mr. Hearing Examiner, I'm opposed to this project for the following 4 reasons, that sort of testimony has much greater weight. Or similarly, I support this application for the following 3 reasons. It's that type of testimony that is a great weight and very helpful to my consideration. So as you await your opportunity to be heard, I'd invite you to pay close attention to the testimony by the city staff, by the applicant, and think about how your position might fit into the city's ordinances, as well as other state regulations that have some impact upon subdivision of land. Apart from that, I don't have any real regulations of your testimony. The record should reflect that it's a relatively few number of public members who have asked to testify at this point. Therefore, I'm not imposing any significant time restraints. Beyond 5 minutes, I'll probably start to make note of it. And beyond 10 minutes, I may ask you to quickly wrap up your testimony. those may seem like restrictions. They aren't. It's hard to talk for 5 minutes or for 10 minutes. And so, again, if I see something longer than that, I'll try to make sure that it's online. And if at some point it seems to be losing its relevance, I may bring it to a conclusion. I will try not to interrupt your testimony. I find that to be very offensive, and therefore I do it very infrequently. And if I'm doing it, it's only because I'm trying to improve upon it. That is, I'm curious about something you've said and I don't quite understand it, or I think it might be stated in a more full way, and therefore I may stop you to allow that opportunity. But otherwise, I'm not going to cross-examine you, and no one else will be cross-examining your testimony. If you do have questions, if you want to testify, but you're primarily seeking an answer to a question, well, that comes to me. I'm the traffic cop for all questions. You ask me the question, I will then decide who I want to ask the question of. And that way I don't lose control of the hearing by having a colloquy that I've no longer had control of. So again, if you do have questions, just leave them with me. I will be certain to get back with them. And if by chance I don't, well, then you can remind me later on. Once all public comment has been received, there will be an opportunity for both city staff and the applicant to respond to that public comment. That's a standard of all public hearings. I think those address all the preliminary matters. City staff may have others, but those are mine. And so I wanted to get us underway. Again, all who testify today will do so under oath. And the first of those would be Mr. Kohler. So Mr. Kohler, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
It should reflect that, again, I do have your staff report and all of its exhibits, or all of its attachments, all of which are exhibits for today's hearing. With that understanding, go ahead.
All right, thank you. The city of Yelm recommends the approval to subdivide a 9.7 acre parcel into 39 lots for detached single family homes. The development will be a continuation of Palisade Street Southeast, which currently serves 24 single family homes. The project location is within 1/4 mile of Ridgeline and Mill Pond Elementary Schools. Regarding noticing for this hearing, the project did receive several comments from neighbors in opposition to the project, mainly citing traffic and construction noise as a primary concern. The city issued a mitigated determination of non-significance for the proposal and uploaded that determination on February 5th, 2025. The conditions listed in the MD&S shall be considered conditions of this approval. Touching on traffic, which is also a part of that MD&S, the applicant prepared a traffic impact analysis, which recommended that a southbound left turn lane be added to State Route 507. The city of Yelm consulted with our on-call transportation planner to assess that TIA. Our third-party review concurred with the analysis and recommendation to include the intersection improvement as condition of this approval. Washington State Department of Transportation also commented and is requiring the applicant to conduct an intersection control evaluation to further study this intersection. And WSDOT will use that data to determine which intersection improvement is necessary. The intersection improvement determined by WSDOT shall be considered a condition of this approval. The city finds that traffic concurrency will be met through the intersection improvement and payment of the standard traffic impact fees. At this intersection, as this intersection is not included in the 6-year TIP, it will not be eligible for a fee credit. Regarding fire protection, at the request of the Southeast Thurston Fire Authority, an additional fire hydrant will be required near lots 11 and 12, or 27 and 28. It doesn't really matter which side of the road it's on, but in that vicinity. And then another hydrant where Road B connects to the existing Palisade Street. The next section regarding site access and frontage improvements. The Yelm Municipal Code requires a subdivision or combination of subdivisions of 25 or more housing units to provide more than one vehicular access from an arterial or collector street. WSDOT would not allow the project additional access to 507, which limits the ingress egress to Palisades Street. The International Fire Code differs from the City of Yelm regulations by requiring residential developments of 30 or more dwelling units that are served by a single public or private access road to be equipped with automatic sprinkler systems. The IFC also prohibits the number of units to be increased on a single fire apparatus access road unless the road will connect with future development as determined by the fire code official. The preliminary plat will meet the requirements of the International Fire Code with a future connection to the southwest and with the installation of automatic sprinkler systems in each unit. The continuation of Palisades Street is to be constructed to local access residential standards and must feature streetscape landscaping that is consistent with local access residential street standards. Up there on track B and track C, they are being proposed as private streets. Both of these streets will need curb installed on both sides of the street, and a joint access easement is required for the joint driveway serving lots 25 and 26. Regarding open space, tract A up there on the left-hand side will be dedicated as open space with a play structure for small kids, but does not meet the 5% requirement. Tract D is on a steep slope, which limits the functionality of the tract for open space. The applicant has agreed to provide off-street recreation / open space improvements to an adjacent parcel that's owned by the City of Yelm. The applicant will replace the basketball hoop, construct a play structure, provide landscaping on the north side of the park, and provide a pathway that connects the basketball court to Palisades Street, which will also connect to Carter Loop, which will provide a nice walkway for local students trying to make their way to Ridgeline or Mill Pond. The Public Services Department recommends the preliminary subdivision be approved with the subject conditions attached to the end of the staff report, with the added condition that the new road A be used as the primary access during construction. And that concludes our report.
I have a number of questions. While the project may comply with the International Fire Code for access, I'm not hearing that it complies with the city ordinance. YMC 1852-080. I don't have the authority to deviate from the city's ordinance. I can't approve something that's not in compliance with the city code. So you haven't, the staff report does not indicate that Palisades is either a collector or an arterial. And therefore, I'm not hearing that it's complying with the city code requirement. Am I missing something?
No, Palisades is the existing Palisades is a local access residential. It's not an arterial or collector.
I don't think I can approve this. I don't believe that it meets the standard, the city standard for access. And while it may meet the fire code, it doesn't meet city ordinance. And so absent some other demonstration, perhaps the city attorney wants to provide me something to the contrary. Otherwise, I think the applicant's going to have to apply for a variance and may or may not be eligible for that variance. The variance standards are quite high, and it's prima facie suggestion would be that it will be difficult to meet that standard for variance. So I'm having a fundamental problem with the access because of the city's very specific code requirement. And I have no authority to deviate from what the city council has imposed on subdivision requirements. So as we sit here, I'm having that difficulty. I'm also having a real problem with safe walking routes. Just by way of background, subdivisions are subject to two levels of subdivision regulation, the local level and the state level. And while the local subdivision rules do not speak to safe walking routes, The state requirements do, that's RCW 58.17.110, which specifically requires a demonstration of safe walking routes for those who would otherwise walk to school. This project is within spitting distance of two schools. It has to have a safe walking route for it. None has been demonstrated so far. It seems like one is possible, but none has so far been demonstrated. And it may be certainly doable, utilizing the adjacent city park and connecting to it, but none has yet been proposed. And without that proposal, I can't, again, approve this application. I do have a number of those are fundamental barriers I'm running into with this project. There are others that are of a more standard nature. I'm curious, where city limits currently lie. I know they've been expanding rapidly. If you go on Google Maps, this is outside the city limit according to Google Maps, but yet coming down 507, the city limit is shown to be about a mile south of this property. Where is the current city limit?
Right at this parcel is the last parcel that connects to city limits at this point.
So it's within or without city limits?
It's within the city limits.
Okay. And what is its land use designation in the comprehensive plan?
R4.
That's its zoning designation. Does it contain the same future land use designation in the comprehensive plan?
I believe it takes it's currently zoned residential.
Okay.
And within the comprehensive plan, it's designated to be residential.
I was looking at the future land use map in your comprehensive plan, and now this is a 8-year-old map, and I'm not sure that this had yet been placed into the city at that time. It suggested as low density residential. And do you know what within the comprehensive plan, not within the zoning code, but within the comprehensive plan, what's regarded as consistency with low density use?
Low density use would be the lowest residential standard that we have.
Right. Which is where I'm going with that is this is a project envisioning roughly 10 units per acre, which in your zoning designation would place it within the high intensity residential use. Your zoning ordinance recognizes 3 levels of intensity: low density, medium density, and high density. And this exceeds the medium density zone density. That's capped at 6 units per acre, if I'm reading it correctly. And so we are proposing use that's, I recognize that the R4 zone does not have a cap on its allowed density, but yet in high intensity zoning designation has a 12, I think 8 to 12 or 12 to 16. My point being that this proposed use is more consistent with areas of the city zoned for high intensity rather than low intensity. And I just want, that's a poorly phrased statement, and it's an even poorer question. My concern is that this intent density is exceeding the intent of the R4 zone. And I'm curious as to how the staff feels about that.
So with 4 units an acre, 4 times 9.7 would be is how we got to the density there. So
all right. So
I believe that it would fit within our density requirement for an R4 zone.
okay. It wasn't minimum density problems. It was I'm sorry.
And R4 is minimum and maximum of 4 units.
Somewhere in your report, it refers to a 9.4 per acre density. Don't know where I'll find that on a quick reading, but I'm sorry, it's on page 6, at the top of the page. It declared that this is proposing 9.7 units per acre.
Page. That could have been a typo if it does say that.
Maybe that's the lot size.
So yeah, 9 points. Oh, that. My apologies. It should say 9.7 acres. I did not mean to write 9.7 per acre.
Okay.
It should be 4 units per acre there.
Okay. Well, that changes things. Mr. Kohler, I'm curious as to the city's vision for the south entrance to the city. It's seen this is the last currently zoned property, but there's clear evidence of proposed development further south along 507. You can see a lot of clearing through this area. It's within the city's urban growth area, I believe. I'm trying to get a better sense of what the city's plan for this entryway is. Do you see residential development of the city to a point south along 507?
I would have to double check on our. The future. I think so. So the connecting, the adjacent parcels in that surrounding area would be residential. Up further to the northwest is zoned as master plan community, but that's pretty far away.
So I'm referring to what would be east side of 507 or southeast side of 507, or that portion of 507 south of this project and east of it, east of the highway. Collectively, as you go further south, is that envisioned as residential development, city residential development in the future?
I think that portion even extends outside the urban growth area.
Right. Here's where I'm going. I'm trying to get a better sense. Currently, this becomes the gateway property to the city's entrance. And I'm trying to get a better sense of both what the city wants to see as its gateway and what will assist in future development to the south. For example, frontage improvements along 507, both consistent with what has been expected of developments further north, as well as what would be compatible and complementary to future development to the south. So that there is, in fact, a true entrance and consistent access and consistent landscaping along the primary entrance into the city, at least from the south. And I'm not getting a good sense of what that is and what might be desired and what would be appropriate for this property. And once again, I'm rambling rather than asking a question. And I apologize for making it difficult for you, but I'm trying to get a sense of whether the city feels satisfied, comfortable with this project as proposed, relative to continuing development to the south and the entranceway into the city.
I would say that with the comprehensive plan designating that land as residential, that this type of development would be sufficient with that.
Well, let's talk about frontage improvements then. And so developments further north, the Hawks Landing has been required to make certain improvements along 507 frontage. Other developments nearby have been expected to do the same thing. This fronts 507, yet it doesn't currently propose any frontage improvements along 507. And I'm curious as to why it would be allowed to a lesser standard of frontage improvements than nearby developments.
They would be required to extend the sidewalk, water main, sewer main,
Okay,
along 507, along their property line on 507.
that wasn't clear from the report. So if that would be in fact required, that's valuable to know. So what you do see is a requirement that frontage improvements be extended along
Correct.
the front of this property. Okay. I am I'm sounding very negative this morning. I am disappointed by the current condition of the stormwater pond. It's not been well maintained. The landscaping has largely died. No efforts have been to restore it. That doesn't bode well for future development. And so I'm curious as to what is proposed for its restoration and perhaps improvement. And also, it's not clear to me that it in fact has been designed to accommodate this project stormwater as well. It sounds as if it has in the staff report, but it's not altogether clear. So let's just talk about the stormwater pond for a moment in general, and both in terms of its capacity, its compliance with the manual, as well as its landscaping. And so tell me the city's thoughts about it.
Yeah, so Palisades, when it was originally platted for the 24 existing homes, uses the existing stormwater facility located on this parcel that we're talking about today. It was intended to be in 2 phases, and it was in the era of 2008 when some stuff just did not get built. So the second phase just sat vacant. Actually, the homes in this subdivision, the last one was just completed within 3 or 4 years ago. So their intent was to share that stormwater facility, and based on our it would be up to the applicant to demonstrate that the existing stormwater could facilitate their subdivision, which would be determined in civil plan review. And they would also need a stormwater agreement with the city to maintain that. And there's already an easement for that stormwater pond. So we can, as the city, go in, perform maintenance and essentially bill the existing homeowners through their HOA.
So the Palisades West HOA has a responsibility for its maintenance currently.
Correct.
This project would have a second HOA responsibility for that stormwater pond.
Yeah, unless they wanted to connect HOAs, but at the end by the time final plat comes around, they would need to either have a joint agreement or 2 individual agreements.
Have you received those landscaping plan for the rehabilitation of its landscape?
We did not in terms of the stormwater. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No. I can talk about that when we get to there.
Okay.
The answer is just a no currently then.
Currently, no, and I'll defer to the applicant.
Sure. Okay. Of a somewhat similar nature, the existing park facility to the east across Palisades presently is a disappointment. It hasn't been mowed for more than a year. All of the equipment is broken. It offers no current usable amenities. This project proposes to rehabilitate it to some extent, but it's not clear whether it's to the full extent. And I have not seen any diagrams as to its restoration, nor evidence that it would be fully restored. And then once restored, that it would be the homeowner's responsibility to maintain it as they would maintain their own park facility. So I'm intrigued by this project as a rehabilitated park would be a regional or community benefit rather than simply this subdivision's benefit. But so far, I'm not getting a strong sense that that's fully proposed, or that once built will be maintained. So, it's yet one more hurdle I'm encountering with this project. It's an unusual proposal to improve a park offsite. But if that's the case, fine. I just need to know exactly what's proposed and how it will be kept in the future. So far, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I would like to touch on that, right? Well, before the hearing, after I sent you the staff report, a preliminary landscape plan for that park was submitted. And I can pull it up on the screen here.
So that's not found with any of the materials currently.
Correct.
So that would become exhibits. We'll call that exhibit 10. And so for the record, just describe what is envisioned in that plan.
Yeah, so after talking with the applicant, we came to an agreement where a play structure would be provided, a new basketball hoop, so rehabilitating that current basketball pad. A walkway that connects from Palisade Street to the basketball court, which there is an existing pathway.
Yes.
From part of the loop. So regarding the safe routes to school as well, I think that would hit on that by providing a trail. You can tell where kids are walking through the grass right now, but how to have a pathway, as well as additional landscaping. So kind of a kickstart. The city owns that parcel. We don't have currently a budget to rehabilitate that parcel, but having the applicant provide offsite improvement would help kickstart that and make that park.
Mr. Cooper wants to add something, and I'll come back to him in a moment. The existing gravel walkway to the northwest of that rectangle, which I believe is a building, that's city-owned property.
That's an easement.
I see.
And there's currently a plat, a short plat that is paving that walkway.
Oh, okay. Because it is gravel and it's uneven and it's not easy to walk on currently. I did walk it. So so there is plans as part of other development to see paving of walkway so that they're multimodal through that area. So in other words, sorry, a fourth grader getting to the nearby school could ride his bike just as easily as he could walk to that school. Would that be the intention?
That's the intention, yes.
There are two private roadways proposed in the interior of the project, which are identified as tracks B and C. I don't see sidewalks on either of those tracks. I would have difficulty approving large segments of this property and having no access by having no pedestrian access. And are there sidewalks that I'm simply not missing on the plans? So that's what that is. Okay. So other staff, for the record, other staff have indicated that along track B on its southern boundary, its western boundary, that there is in fact a proposed sidewalk. Is that correct?
Correct.
Let's turn to track C then. And same thing, that there is along its western boundary a proposed sidewalk. Okay. All of the surrounding subdivisions are fenced along the perimeter. Would that be the expectation of this project?
Correct.
And in terms of other landscaping, have you received a landscape plan?
Very preliminary landscape plan. We do finalize the landscaping plans during civil plan review. Currently, yeah, this was not submitted as part of the report. But essentially the 6-foot planter strip and street trees with being 35-foot off center and 3-to-1 accent tree.
So in other words, standard landscaping for residential streets are consistent with the city standards for that type of development.
Yes.
I'm curious about track D. Is anything proposed for it, or does it remain in its present condition? Track D is the steep slope along 507.
Right here.
Is that indicating existing landscaping, or is that proposed? Do you know?
I'll defer to the applicant on that one. We were essentially focused on the open space tract offsite.
Okay. So Mr. Cooper was inviting some additional testimony a minute ago. Let's hear from him. Mr. Cooper, if you want to come forward where you can be memorialized and sworn, you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Go ahead.
Andrew stated part of what I was going to say in terms of the open space across the street. It's city owned. The history on that is that it was a ceded right of way at one time that was intended for a roads project that never occurred. The city intends to incorporate that into its parks master plan. So the maintenance, improvement, upkeep after it gets jump started would fall into the hands of the city and be part of our overall parks.
Okay.
That's all I have.
That's helpful information. Thank you. Mr. Kohler, I partially asked a question, but I didn't complete it. With respect to that property and the easement that exists along that building to the east, is that an easement that can be made can be used by the public, your knowledge?
Yes, it was when it was built, when that subdivision was created. Essentially, that was supposed to be an easement for the residents living in Carter Loop, Hawks Landing, to access the park. And as you can see, it's not really a used space.
So an indirect way of saying that between Palisades Street and Carter Loop, the city has either ownership or public easement rights sufficient to go from one to the other by pedestrians.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
And so
Didn't mean to.
let me try that slightly differently. If a walkway, a safe walking route was required, that one could be achieved by utilizing existing sidewalks within Palisade and this project, gaining access to a rock walkway through the city property and the city controlled easement, in turn gain it access to Carter Loop and on via sidewalks to the two schools.
Yes.
I beat you up. I think that ends my questions. In light of anything I've asked you, desire to have any other staff testify this morning?
I don't believe so.
Okay, we'll turn then to the applicant and who will be its representative. Good morning, and you are
My name is Matt Weber. I'm a civil engineer with HBO.
WEBER.
Yeah, 1B. And I do have the applicant Garrett Holmes with me, Sean.
Okay, Mr. Weber, I've started this off poorly with explaining that I'm having trouble finding legal authority to grant this because of access issues. And so, yes, I'm just kind of setting the table for the testimony that's to proceed. That again, it is, you've heard the questions I've asked of staff and the legal concerns I have. So as we get underway, I just would remind you of those concerns. So let's have you sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for presentation. I did make notes of your questions, and I think access is probably the big one. So that was a question that we explored in the very beginning of this project of how we were going to provide two access points. And as Andrew pointed out, I don't know if you picked up on that, but we approached MoDOT for another access to SR 507. That is a state route, and they did not want to have another connection to the state route.
Understood.
So in working with the city, we do have two connections, from Palisades, the Road A, Road B connection. And the city determined that by us providing the connection to the property to the west, that did meet the code for the code section that you just referenced, with the two access points.
They acknowledge that it meets the International Fire Code.
Beyond that it met the code.
They do not state that, and Mr. Kohler did not state that this morning. Nothing has been stated so far that it complies with 1852-080.
You want to read that? Could you read that specifically?
Mr. Kohler could.
Yeah, I will pull that up.
It requires connection to either an arterial or a collector. And Palisade Street is neither an arterial or a collector.
I see. I thought you were talking about the two connection points.
No, the number of connections is fine. It is what they connect to, which is problematic. And the city's ordinance mandates, I do not have discretion. It mandates that those connections be to either an arterial or a collector, and Palisades is neither. And that is where I'm having a legal barrier to this application.
But the state route is.
Yes,
Yeah, so the public road that is Palisades connects to, I mean, I guess I don't know if it's a nomenclature thing, but a state route is beyond a collector or an arterial. I mean,
that would be true of every street in the city. That analysis, everything ultimately connects to an arterial. That doesn't make it an arterial. And so,
but we have the connection to it. I guess I'm not following you. Can you be specific on what it is? So it's not the two access points. It's connecting to it, an arterial.
yes. And it's not, I'm relying upon the city's own ordinance. It's not my standard, it's the city standard. And the city requires, according to its language, direct connection to a collector or an arterial. It doesn't require ultimate connection, it requires connection. This is not a connection to either. And that's where I'm having trouble. Now, the city could revise its ordinance. The applicant could consider a variance. But as we sit here today, I cannot rule as a matter of law that this standard has been met.
I'm
understand.
I'm telling you the truth that in the very beginning of this project, this was a question to the city. And when working with the city, it was my understanding that Palisades was going to be or is a neighborhood collector. And so the question was, so we do meet the code there with respect to that.
We'll cut this off. Otherwise, we're going to continue simply to disagree. I disagree. And my conclusion is the final word, not the city staff. And so I conclude as a matter of law that this requirement has not been met. I'm happy to allow the parties an opportunity to present legal arguments as to how it has been met. None has been presented so far. If the city attorney wants to weigh in and provide a legal brief on this issue, I am happy to review it. But the clear reading of this ordinance is not met. And interpretations by staff are not binding on me, especially as to questions of law. And therefore, my legal conclusion is that this ordinance has not been satisfied. I would invite the applicant's counsel and the city attorney to address that issue and provide contrary opinions and why. But as we sit here today, I am not satisfied that that's been met, and I conclude that it hasn't been met. So again, when we conclude today, we can discuss the opportunity for further briefing on the legal questions that have been posed, if that's what is desired. But as we otherwise sit here, I am running into a legal barrier to this application. Mr. Kohler.
Yeah, when we were assessing this, looking down at C and D there of 18.52.080. That the applicant is able to show to the satisfaction of the director that a significant hardship would exist if access is not approved. And also with D, no other practical or feasible access is available.
When did that occur?
That's been in the code.
No, not when that's in the code. When did that process occur? It's not mentioned in the report. There's been no discussion of the director undertaking a separate review and reaching and rendering an administrative decision. I have no evidence of that.
Understood.
Yeah, like I had mentioned in the beginning, that this was a topic of discussion on day one. And I would like.
I understand that.
And for us to respond to that.
I have no problem with that. But if there has been an administrative decision, it needs to be reduced to writing, and it needs to be part of the record, and it needs to be or as part of my consideration. But the staff report makes no mention. There is no written record, and I have no evidence of that. And so if in fact that has occurred, okay, but to date, I have not seen it. So, okay. So we beat that to death. So let's go on to other issues.
I think, okay, so you were asking about the landscape plan?
Yes.
We did submit a preliminary landscape plan, which Andrew pulled up on the screen. I think we need to admit that as an exhibit to this.
That just was, that's what I did.
Yeah, exhibit.
That became exhibit 10.
Okay, thank you.
And while it was referred to initially as the landscaping for the park, it's actually a comprehensive landscaping plan.
Correct. I was taking note of some of your questions. I think Andrew did a good job with the safe walking route and the frontage improvements. So there are frontage improvements required and actually show on the plan. So we will be building a new sidewalk along SR 507 and a new crosswalk over Palisades, which currently doesn't exist. So, yeah, and then that Andrew, as that connects into the park, that would be a safe walking route to school. You asked about the park and you asked about track D. So on that, so track D is the. I don't have my.
Go and show us, you can go and
Yeah.
show us, no, you don't need to be on, it would be easier for everybody that doesn't know. You just point it out.
So track D was the open space.
Yes,
And those are going to be slopes
right.
to meet the recreation requirements on site. So that we have added track A and track D for the overall open space requirements. And we were going to put some park benches or something in track D. The city reached out to the applicant and asked for a consideration that because those are slopes, that rather than doing something on the slopes, that we would contribute to the city park. And the applicant agreed to do that, which is what you saw on that.
Yes, and that I did understand from the staff report. My question that I had asked staff was simply, with that in mind, with track D being left as passive open space, what, if anything, is proposed for its landscaping, or is it simply being left in its current state?
Now we're gonna be, to make the grades work, we'll be working that area, so there will be
I see.
new dirt, and then that preliminary landscape plan, those were new trees, that was one of your questions.
Yes.
So that'll be hydroseeded and planted and stabilized with new trees and landscaping. But we're not proposing any type of recreational amenities there.
Understood. Again, recognizing that as recognizes passive open space, not active open space. Yes.
You had mentioned the fencing, whether we were proposing fencing, so there is a condition in the staff recommended condition in the staff report, I think it's number 7, where it talked about perimeter landscaping. But the code provides ways to provide that perimeter landscaping. You can do ferns. One of those mechanisms is a fence, like 6 foot board fence, which is what we're proposing. So on the perimeter, there would be a fence in lieu of a berm or other landscaping.
Let me try that again. You're absolutely right that the city's regulations impose a variety of perimeter landscaping, with fencing being one of them. And so from a default standpoint, fencing can become the means of achieving perimeter landscaping. But there is an overlay to that, and that I have ultimate authority to approve landscaping and can do something different than what the default mechanisms are. My point being that I would be inclined to impose a fence, even and would override other aspects of the city's regulations, since other nearby developments have had exterior fencing that I would expect that to be imposed as well. But you've already proposed that, and so we're of a like mind in that regard. So,
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. You had asked about the storm, so maybe we could talk about the storm a little bit.
yeah.
So that area that's called Tract E, there is an existing easement that for Palisades and for the existing Palisades that drains into that pond. That pond, what it is it's a combination, what's called a wet pond and an infiltration pond. So the wet pond is not very sightly because it's supposed to have a permanent pool of water, and then that overflows into the infiltration.
I was inartful in some of my language. When I refer to it as unsightly, I wasn't referring to the pond itself, because I understand its biological functions, and that requires that it sometimes not look like we would like a feature to look, but rather its more important requirement is that it achieves certain ecological functions, or in this case, stormwater functions. It was the perimeter of the pond that I was disappointed with. It was its earlier landscaping that is allowed to fall into disarray. That's the aspect of the pond that I found disappointing.
I see. That concern might be taken care of because the proposal, which is in the drawings of the preliminary plat, what our proposal is to rebuild that pond. So we're wanting to expand the pond to basically take that wet pond component away and do a treatment, a mechanical, like a storm filter. So a more modernized treatment mechanism, and then expand the pond so that would become solely infiltration. And we've done test pits and monitoring of that. So the proposal is to do improvements within that pond area, expand it, the flow control component of it. And formalize the access road to it for maintenance and those kind of things.
Understood.
Yeah, I guess. I think, yeah, those were the things I picked up on, so.
Okay.
Any other questions or?
Mr. Weber, I don't think so. I think you were paying attention. You spotted the questions I had. You've responded to them, so I appreciate that.
Said it's not fire code for the city only.
So I don't have any other questions of you. Okay. Would you like to have others as part of your team? That's fine. Okay.
I think.
All right. So the record would reflect that the applicant had presented its testimony. So that brings us to the public hearing section of today's hearing. In advance, the city staff asked those who might be interested to testify to indicate that on a sign-up sheet. I just want to make certain first that none of the people who, one point that none of the people who have signed up are simply representatives of either the city or the applicant. Sometimes that happens, and we want to weed those out. And also a reminder that those who did not sign up still have the opportunity to testify. So those who signed up, are any of these individuals associated with either the applicant or the city staff? The answer is no, so that these are truly members of the public. I'm going to go through that in the order that they're signed up, and then we'll see if there's anyone else who wants to be heard. So the first I have is Karen Yukish. Ms. Yukish, you want to come to the podium? Have you sworn? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the full truth, and nothing but the truth? Am I correct that you provided some written comment as well?
Yes.
I thought so. Go ahead.
So my name is Karen Yukish, and I'm the president of the current HOA for Palisades. And I I think that my letter initially, the biggest thing we were concerned about, we know we can't stop development, but we also were very concerned about the road access to our current road on Palisades. And my first option was to not join the roads at the top, just because of the fact that all that traffic from the new development will be going through our neighborhood. And there's a lot of families, little children, and it's going to impact the neighborhood. And the other one was that if it has to be that way, during development, that they only use as construction that lower portion of access into the new development off of Palisades. So that would be Road A, I believe, down below, and not come around and come through. I asked the city if they could drop a Jersey barrier. Because I thought we've got to keep them from coming through there all the time during the process of development. And I was told that you can't block a city road. And that's the first thing that goes into a construction site is the infrastructure, the roads, the power, the water. So it's just something that we were very, very concerned about. And I'm speaking on behalf of the 24 homeowners that now live on that street. And it sounds like there might be some issues going forward, and we'd really like to know if there's some kind of meeting or discussion about variances or those kinds of things. We'd kind of like to be a part of that discussion. The other thing was the pond, the retention pond. I'm the newest, I bought the property. I'm the last house that was built on Palisades, so I might not know all the regs and rules. But we were very aware of the trees dying and it looking terrible. And we don't want to have the responsibility for maintaining the landscaping as a HOA on that retention pond.
You don't get to lose it. It's part of your CCRs.
Okay.
It's fixed.
Like I said, I haven't read all the rules.
Yeah, no, that's etched into the conditions of your development's approval. So that I have no ability to undo that.
Okay. And does the new development take a portion of it then? Or is that also somewhere? It should be taken up somewhere else.
No, it's a good question. And the only reason I'm hesitating is that it's in part a condition of what I impose. It's in part, certain matters are sort of hardwired into the city's subdivision requirements. And so between the two, I think the short answer is yes, its HOA will have a life responsibility.
Okay, because that was asked if we wanted to merge the HOAs, and I was getting an emphatic no on our side. So they don't want to combine our 24 with their 39 because it just would be a lot more.
And I cannot impose that. I cannot impose an obligation on an unrelated third party.
Okay.
So that's something for you to decide, not for me to consider.
When does that happen then? When does that decision, I mean, in the process of this, when do those decisions get made?
I'm not
Okay.
able to answer those.
Yeah, I'll investigate
Thank you.
on my own. Okay, we were concerned about the fencing, and it sounds like they're putting in a 6-foot fence along the property line between Palisades, the current home, and that's great. We definitely wanted that to happen. And the other question that's arisen, and I don't know, this is probably a city one, is just the water. We live on unusual circumstances where we're pumping water up a hill. And apparently the current system with the city and the water people is that we have enough oomph to get the water up the hill and enough water to do it. And that's a safety issue. And I know that the new development has internal sprinkler systems for their homes that they're going to be building. But we're just concerned about volume and water pressure and, is that all going to work with all of what's going on? So the water was something that came up in the meetings that we had. I tried to keep it just to, the road is a big one. I figure we would have a win if we just kept the construction people off the road coming by our homes. And now it looks like there might be some other issues. So those will be taken up whenever. And I think that's pretty much covering everything that I needed to bring forward to you folks.
Thank you. Before I have you take a seat again, Ms. Yukish,
Yes.
Ms. Kohler, you began by noting the construction road requirements, and are they consistent with what Ms. Yukish has suggested?
I believe so. Yeah, Ms. Yukish and I have had multiple conversations. And that's what I was trying to communicate, is having the construction traffic use road A and keep as much traffic as possible off of the existing Palisades Street.
Okay. All right, I thought so. I was just confirming. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Ben Siro?
Yes, can you do me a favor and put the Google and everything, because I'm sorry. Yes, I'm gonna tell the truth, the best of my knowledge. I just need to see because I live adjacent to it. And my question, put it,
Okay, so let's, now that we're there, let's first stop and have you sworn. Mr. Siro, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth,
Yes,
nothing,
I do.
nothing but the truth?
And one thing that you guys mentioned, but you didn't go into it, it's the traffic impact. You have. Yeah. And if you have right now, if they go to 507 on the traffic and take a right, the easiest way is on Mill Road. If they're the closest way to come to Yelm, to town, you go down 507, take a right, and Mill Road. Mill Road, you already put subdivision. The roads, because of the sidewalk, actually became thinner. So we are already, because I live here on Foxy Road, we are already experiencing a high traffic volume. And when you said traffic impact, and you're gonna put 40 more homes, how does it, who is doing it, and how do you measure the impact? Because that road, it's the quickest way to go to town, not the main light. And there was, when I moved here 25 years ago, there was already planned to be a loop here to make it easier, but right now there is more. There are already 2 subdivisions already being built here next to the park and here, so how, what I didn't see is how do you measure the impact? Not only, I mean, you're gonna have 40 more homes here, more on the bigger picture. My concern is that it's too much traffic on a narrow road here because of the school, the sidewalks are wider. If you drive here, you'll see that the road is really narrower than it used to be before.
Okay,
So
so I'll inquire of both the city and the applicant for responses to how traffic impacts have been analyzed.
thank you so much.
Anything else? Okay, I'll come back to that at the conclusion of all testimony.
Thank you.
Next is Bob Horn. Mr. Horn, let's have you sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner, city staff and public. Could city staff bring up 1852-080 one more time, please? Very much. Mr. Hearing Examiner, you stated at the beginning here that you saw fundamental barriers to approving this proposal. And I want to echo those and highlight a few. This for the record, 1852-080, every subdivision or combination of subdivisions of 25 or more housing units in a commercial or industrial development calculated to generate more than 250 vehicle trips per day shall provide more than one vehicular access from an arterial or collector street. As you noted, Mr. Hearing Examiner, our street, and I'm a resident of Palisades Street Southeast, is a local access residential street. I believe it's been made clear that apart from a variance or city staff administrative decision, that the required vehicular access from Palisades Reserve, the reserve at Palisades, is not being connected to an arterial or collector street. That impacts our residents, our safety. It increases the vehicle trips through our neighborhood. So I would like to state for the record that I am opposed to any variance or administrative decision to work around 1852-080. For that reason, the letter C and D, as you had noted, there is no record of the director allowing the applicant to show to the satisfaction of the director that a significant hardship would exist if access is not approved. And if a variance was pursued, I would just again echo that this impacts our neighborhood with that extra traffic. Apart from,
Let me just, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Horn. Let me make clear that I'm not considering a variance today.
correct,
There's a process for that, and substantive due process obligations impose an obligation to give notice and an opportunity for hearing. So none of that has happened and isn't happening right now.
then I'll merely say that I agree and support a decision to oppose this based on what 1852-080 says presently. Is that a good summary?
Yes,
Okay, very good.
thank you.
Good. I think that concludes what I wanted to say. That was what I wanted to make clear, and yeah, I'll conclude with that.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with the writing. Is it sumac? Is it ivy? Something close to that? Is there anyone else present who signed up who hasn't had the opportunity? You know who it was that signed up? The fourth person? Okay, I have a strong suspicion I'm doing terrible things to this name, but I just I can't read it better than that. Is there anyone else who wanted to be heard? Yes, sir. Come forward.
Hello, sir. Good morning. My name is Alex Acosta. I'm currently a resident of Palisades.
Let me slow you down. It's Alex,
Alex Acosta,
DECOSTA.
ACOSTA.
Okay, sorry. So Mr. Acosta, let's have you sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
All right. So currently I have two kids who attend Mill Pond Elementary and Ridgeline Middle School. So last year's levy did not pass. Before that levy did not pass, we were already short $8 million for Yelm School District. And because that levy did not pass, now we're short another $4 to $5 million for resources for the students. So far, that's about $11 million. This year's levy did not pass, so now we're short about another $4 to $5 million for resources for students. So that's about $15 to $16 million for the students. Now adding another section up there will just bring more students to our already overcapacitated classes. And we're already short resources for the students. That's one thing I'd like to take into consideration for this.
So let me both acknowledge and disappoint you in that regard. You're absolutely correct. But as a matter of law, concurrency with school requirements is achieved by interlocal agreement between the city and the school district through the payment of impact fees. And so while yes, the schools are burdened and are increasingly so, as to new development, that burden is addressed through the fees that are imposed on the development itself. I generally have no control in my decision-making based upon the agreement that's already been achieved between the school district and the city relative to those things, in the same way that, say, fire impacts are addressed through fire impact fees and certain other impacts are pre-addressed through agreements reached between the agencies affected. So I'm not discounting your observation. I'm simply being transparent in the fact that it's something that is addressed in a different way, and I really don't have control over that.
Yes, sir.
Anything that you wanted to add to your testimony?
No, just the security as well. I was the first person to buy my house on my side of the road or our side of the road. And everybody in this room knows that when you are building a new community or new developments, that security is an issue. I've had to chase off vagrants and the like. And then just having that one road in there, it's just gonna bring, as Bob has already stated, it's gonna bring more traffic up into there, into that development that's being built. More people to come and take stuff from the applicants, construction workers. And then obviously that's gonna bring crime into the neighborhood as well, so.
All right.
That's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Let me ask once again, are there any other members of the public present who wish to be heard? Not getting any other takers. So the record should reflect that that concludes the public hearing portion of today's hearing, which gets us back first to the city. Mr. Kohler and the rest of staff are allowed an opportunity to respond both to the applicant's presentation as well as to the public comments. Mr. Kohler or Mr. Cooper or any of staff, do you wish to provide further response to that testimony?
Yes.
And go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
080 up again. I had to think about your comments, Mr. Hearing Examiner, for a little bit. I agree that from the standpoint of the staff report, it would have been a very good idea to put in the decision that was made about basically C and D. Just for some background, every Wednesday, our whole team meets with the director. We discuss projects, sometimes multiple times over the weeks. The discussion around this, concerned the fact that DOT was not allowing access on 507. We do have that in writing. So that's why the decision was made. The code does not specifically say that it has to be reduced in writing from the director. However, we'd be happy to supply something in writing to you to explain why the decision was made.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. And yes, that would be required because I think it's its own LUPA issue. And therefore, as with all Land Use Petition Act issues, there needs to be a start date. And the start date becomes an official decision. So an oral decision doesn't generate a start date for that. And therefore, I believe it does need to be reduced to writing, not only for that opportunity, if there is one, but also for my record to have fully established. And so I'm gonna come back to that a bit more fully in a minute. But is there anything else that the staff wanted to address?
Yes, I just have a question. So is it possible to hold the record open to obtain that written determination?
That's what I'll come back to.
Yes, okay.
Anything else, Mr. Cooper, Mr. Kohler?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Weber, you've heard the public comments. Anything you want to respond to?
Couple things.
Okay.
I appreciate Mr. Cooper willingness to work with us on and keeping the record open. But I was just looking, and we do have an email from the very beginning where it does say the director decided and provided. It's probably not as clear as you want right now because this was just an email chain. But so I'll work with you, Mr. Cooper, and we will get you more formalized document related to that matter.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to respond?
I was just going to respond to one of the public comments about the traffic.
I assured all the members of the public that if they asked questions, I would get back to them, and I did not get back to Mrs. Sierra's question. Do you have your traffic person present?
We do not have our traffic engineer, but we did do a traffic impact analysis.
Yes.
On the street that he was referencing there on Mill Road. I don't have good information for Mill Road where he was specifically asking.
Right. So
I am aware that the city does have traffic information there. I've worked on other projects on Mill Road. So that information is available at the city, but it's not in the Reserve of Palisades data.
Let me, thank you for reminding me of that issue, Mr. Weber. Let me turn back to the city. Mr. Kohler, would you have any traffic or engineering staff available to in any way respond to Mr. Sura's question?
Not traffic engineer staff. I did pull up the traffic impact analysis from the applicant. Mill Road was kind of out of the scope for this project. But in return, the traffic facilities charges will, pay for the improvements, around the city where issues are.
You've confirmed what I believed, which was that the TIA does not extend its analysis to that portion of the city. It's focused more on 507 and connecting streets near this area. Would that be a fair summary?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
May I add one thing?
Yes.
Sorry. Just for explanation for the folks present, but every project that we do, especially of this scale, we do require the applicants to submit a traffic impact analysis. We don't accept it whole cloth. We have an independent third party review that. So we send it out to a consultant to verify it, basically for peer review, to make sure that the conclusions of the TIA are agreed to. If warranted, those traffic impact analyses would or could require off-site mitigation if there are going to be adverse impacts to traffic. So we do evaluate the traffic.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. That will conclude the testimony today. I'm not yet rendering a decision on this. I will hold the record open for what is today, Wednesday, the 26th. What are 2 Fridays from now? Does someone have a calendar readily available?
March 7.
Thank you. So I'll hold the record open until Friday, March 7 at 5:00 p.m. For the singular purpose of responding to this issue of satisfying, give my code correct, YMC 18.52.080. So what I would ask of the city within that time frame are 2 things. One is a written declaration of having granted an exception, and I want something from the city attorney explaining how the ordinance works and its compliance. And so a legal brief from the city attorney confirming that that is in fact a correct interpretation of the city's ordinance. I'm inviting the applicant to respond as well, to supplement whatever may be presented by the city staff, and to provide its own legal briefing if it wishes as well, all of which is to be received by me by, again, Friday, March 7 at 5:00 p.m., at which time that then starts the clock for my decision, and I will then comply with the required period of time to provide a decision based upon that date. This is not an extension of the open record itself. This is an extension for the limited purpose of that issue to resolve. So during this time, I'm not seeking additional public comment or any other responses. It is limited to that purpose. I should conclude by 2 things. One, thanking everybody who has taken the time to be present today. It's been very beneficial to have this testimony and acknowledgement that coming into this, this was for me, the least impressive application I've reviewed in a long time on its face. And today's hearing has greatly improved its standing with me. But coming in, I could not see access issues being resolved. I was concerned with frontage issues. I was very concerned with safe walking issues. I was concerned with the degradation of existing facilities, none of which was impressing me. And so this application got off to a very poor start, partly because of site conditions, partly because of things that didn't seem to be fully addressed. And hence the hostility that I may have demonstrated at the beginning of this hearing. Now, much of that has been resolved, not to its entirety yet. But I do, if I was crotchety, I want to apologize, but that's my job. It is to examine these carefully, to be the guardian of the public's interest, and to make sure that all i's are dotted and t's are crossed. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm making sure that in fact, if this is approved, it's met every requirement that it's obligated to meet. So again, I want to thank everybody for their participation. And with those last comments, we are